How do you become a grateful woman? Welcome to the January Donovan Show. It's our how to practical life training. And today we're going to talk about why it's so important to be grateful. My role is twofold. I'm going to give you the why, and going to give you the how. Why is it important to be grateful? And how do you become a grateful woman? Because most of us are told to be grateful, but we're never shown how to be grateful. And this is something that is not taught in our elementary years, in our high school years. And we wake up one day and we realize, wait a minute, am I even a grateful woman? What is gratitude anyway? And we're hearing now, so many sort of, I would say, evidence, but even conversation about a grateful heart. So, how do you become a grateful woman? And I want you to take the good from this. And, our schools and the training that we offer you really is there to train you. And so much of this is about a reflection on where you are in your journey to becoming the woman you want to be. So today it's about becoming a woman of gratitude. So let's begin with rating ourselves. Rating ourselves in the school is a great way for us to study our starting point. It's knowing, oh, wait a minute, there's certain things that maybe I don't have language for, and I don't realize, oh, I thought I was a 10, but really I'm a 0 or a 5 or a 6. And I think this is something where we just look introspectively and examine ourselves. And that's really what this rating ourselves for. So let's begin. Okay. There's no shame. This is you, your personal retreat, and awareness. Okay. So number one, 0 to 10, 10 being a yes, 0 being a no. You automatically complain or you automatically show your gratitude. Something happens. Oh, I can't believe, you did that. Or, you know what? Thank you. I don't understand it, but thank you. Thank you for, if somebody gives you something, you don't like it, or the weather is bad, it's always a complaint, or thank you, the sun is out, or thank you, it's raining. Number two, our tonality is rough. Well, we don't know that our tonality communicates gratitude. If we say, hey, thanks, hey, thank you so much for doing that, or we say, thank you so much for doing that, it's received differently. And we could be saying all the right words, but our words are only 7%. Our tonality is 38% in our body language. So we have to be aware if you're paying attention to your tonality, what would your tone of gratitude be? 10 being, yeah, my tone is grateful, not rough. Number three, facial expression. I could go and be like, hey, thanks. Or I could say, thank you. I really appreciate you doing that. And it's received differently because once again, my kids, could say thank you all day long, but maybe their facial expression isn't really grateful because they don't know it. It's not that, we're not taught that only 7% is words. Because I tell my children all the time, I'm like, you're saying all the right things with your 7%, but your 30 and 55 sounds like a complaint. So just something to be aware of. Number four, we do bare minimum script. Thanks. In the women's school, we have a 3-part gratitude script. Thanks, or thank you so much, or thank you for, right? It's not sort of the bare minimum. It's making the added bonus of, thank you for making the time. Number five, we are consistent, inconsistent, or are we consistent about our gratitude, right? We're inconsistent. Sometimes we're grateful, sometimes we're not. But are we a consistently grateful woman? Number six, we pay attention to the details in the room. We walk in a room and we're like, oh, wow, thank you for, look at that. That's so beautiful. That color of the carpet, that shirt. We always have something so intentional to be grateful for, as opposed to looking at everything that's wrong in the room. So, where are you in that journey of awareness? And the goal here for us is we need to understand how we can design a grateful woman in every circumstance. And the purpose of learning how to be a grateful woman is number one, doors of opportunities open when you're grateful. When we're complaining, nobody wants to do anything for us. I mean, think about it. When your child's complaining, who wants to give them anything? But when we live a life of a constant gratitude, doors open. All of a sudden, somebody wants to help us find a job. I remember this one woman I was training, and she said, Jenny, nobody ever does anything for me. But since I was training her, I was very much aware that she complained about everyone else, and her lack of gratitude actually made people not want to be around her. But she was unaware of it. And secondly, It helps us and our peace and the serotonin that happens in our body simply because we are grateful and we release all these negativity, and it helps us in our ability to actually feel healthier when we are grateful. So not only does it open external doors, but interiorly it actually makes us feel better about who we are. So here's a question. How do you walk in the office? Okay. Do you say traffic was awful, or do you say good morning, it's nice to see you, even if the traffic was awful? Do you light up the room seeing all the good, or do you spew out complaint? When you see your kids after school, when you pick them up, do you say, how did your test go? Or do you take the time and say, it's so lovely to see you. How did your test go? Right? Is it just sort of like back to business right away? When you see your husband come home from work, do you say, "Oh, dinner's on the table, make sure you take the trash out"? Or, "Hi, honey, I'm so happy you're home." A lot of times we complain about why our husbands are not very tender to us, and maybe we're unaware that we've also been callous towards them. When things are challenging, do we say, "Ah, this is the worst case scenario. This is horrible. This is awful," or could be worse? Could be worse, right? So it could always be worse. Right? When someone gives you a gift that maybe you don't like, and it doesn't have to be a physical gift, it could be somebody at work, it could be your boss gave you, the 2 day off that you wanted, but maybe not the 3 days off that you wanted. Is it automatic like, oh, I'm not sure how I feel about this? Or is it, you know, thank you for making the time. I would appreciate if it was 3 days, but I'm grateful. I mean, just that grateful heart makes such a huge difference. Your boss might even want to give you 4 days if you you know, just a sense of communicating your level of gratitude as a woman. When you're at the grocery store, you're checking out, do you just ignore the clerk or do you talk to them? That's a sign of a grateful woman, that she's not just thinking about herself. They're just thinking, how could I light up this room? Because I'm so grateful to be alive. How was your day? What about to your employees? Do you say, oh, I'm paying them, so they do this? It's a mindset, right? Of sort of this ingratitude. Or I'm so grateful. Even though I'm paying you, I'm like, I'm so grateful for your work. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here. A culture of gratitude at work. I mean, I've got, I have really great team around me. And it used to be when I started the business, I just felt like I, even, the people that work for me, it was sort of, they were also not grateful. And it really didn't last long in our company because to me, a grateful heart is so key in building sort of a great team. And maybe you're unaware of just the way you're showing up and you're 38% and 55%. Okay. What is the greatest value that a woman can offer? This is a great question, right? How you make people feel. Because how you make people feel determines if you make them feel valuable or invaluable. Now, you could do this and not know it, but a grateful woman makes people feel important. They contribute and give people evidence of their goodness. They contribute to their self image because when you're grateful to somebody and you communicate, I'm so thankful for you, it actually makes them feel so good about who they are that you are giving them evidence that they are a valuable human being because you're taking the time and making the time to actually communicate how grateful you are to them. Isn't it feel so good when our kids make the time to say, Mom, thank you so much for dinner. That was so good. Mom, I didn't like it, but thank you for making dinner. It's like the first thing sometimes, "Oh, I don't like this." I'm like, "Can you imagine you work so hard for dinner and the first thing that they do is complain because they don't like it?" But see, our children don't know how to communicate gratitude. They're unaware. And if we're not aware that the first thing they're spewing out is complaining about what they don't have as opposed to what they're giving, then that's something that we need to rectify. And maybe it first needs to be rectified within our own hearts, right? Because an ungrateful woman makes people feel rotten because it makes them feel that they don't matter. Isn't how you feel when your boyfriend or your boyfriend or maybe your spouse or your children or your boss, you work so hard for a meal or a project and all you get is a thank you. Or maybe that you get a thank you, but that's it. It's this sense of, you know what? Thank you so much for working so hard and going above and beyond. Thank you for making that dinner. Thank you for making me lunch, dear beloved wife of mine or husband of mine. Thank you for doing that. And it's not, hey, thanks for doing that. It's thank you for doing that. It lands differently. Can you see the difference? Right? And the question we have to ask ourselves is how do we make people feel around us? Because that's a good metric for us to question if we are a grateful woman, because maybe we don't know how we're showing up because we don't know what we don't know. We need to have a metric on how we are actually showing up, right? So, how do you make people feel? Do people around you feel important? Because if they don't feel important, then maybe there's something that we're not aware of that we're doing unknowingly and we are being calloused with them. Or maybe we have a lot of pride in our heart that we don't know, and we know this because we don't want to give people credit or withhold some kind of affirmation. We build a bad habit of maybe taking people for granted unknowingly, or maybe we think we're better than everyone else. We want to be a grateful woman, but there's a pride in our heart that needs to be rectified and changed, and just we're aware of it. Number three, maybe we have some unprocessed pain that has caused a lot of wounds, makes us feel insecure, and we, instead of being grateful and communicating our gratitude to our friend, we compare ourselves because deep down inside, maybe there's something we don't like about ourselves. It kind of feels like this. It's like if you've got a gaping wound, right, and it's hurting you and you're bleeding, it's hard to look at somebody else who's bleeding and say, can you please take care of them? Because you're just trying to survive. So what we do is that unknowingly we deny people what we deserve because there's something that's hurting within us and it needs to be processed and healed. And this is why we need to heal. Because the problem is we don't know, right? The thing that I want to remind you is that your gratitude changes the room. It influences people. It leaves the room better than you left it. It inspires people to do good. It gives people evidence of their value. It makes you so memorable, not because of you, but because of how you've made them feel. Because people don't remember what people say, they remember how they feel when they spoke with you. And that's how we walk around as a grateful woman, is that we pay attention of how we make people feel, right? Do we elevate the culture? Are we grateful and ungrateful? Because this is something that we have to police ourselves on a consistent basis. Do we elevate the room or do we degrade the room? Do we make people feel more valuable or do we devalue them unknowingly? Do we inspire people or do we suck the life out of them because we're spewing complain all day long, right? An ungrateful woman could poison a society and she doesn't even know it. Think about that. An ungrateful woman could poison society and she doesn't even know it. So, the metric that we need to consider on a consistent basis for the rest of our life is that how do we make people feel around us? Do we make them feel valuable or devalued? 0 to 10. And it's something that we need to do all the time because it's a constant awareness. It's not like, oh, it's one and done. Gratitude is something that we practice, right? So, how does your kids feel? Do they feel valued by you? Does your husband feel valued by you? Your coworkers, your mom's group, your friends, your boss, your church? Do you make people feel valuable? Do they want to be around you? And that's how you know that you have a grateful heart because people want to be around you. And here's why: nobody wants to be around somebody who complains. Nobody, unless they too are complaining. And then misery loves a miserable company. So if people are attracted to you, know that it comes from your ability to actually make them feel important. And that's something that you ought to celebrate. I'm going to just say something here that's going to sting a little bit. For all of you who are women of faith, an ungrateful woman of faith poisons people's image of God. And it's a subtle poison. If what comes out to you is a constant complaint, if I say, oh, look at this pastor, ugh, I don't like him, is awful. Or you know what? I don't agree with everything he teaches, but I really appreciate that he's doing his part to do the good. But if the first thing that comes out of our mouth is what we don't like and what we complain about it, just know that if you're talking to somebody who might be young in their faith, you could be poisoning them, their image of God. Okay, the truth about humility, it makes someone beautiful. It means that we're open to feedback. It means that you're sitting here and you realize maybe I'm not quite as grateful as I thought, January. Maybe I don't know. Because it requires a woman to take responsibility in her own I would say, growth, right? Because we don't always, we don't, we're not always aware of how we are showing up. And more importantly, we don't arrive. We're always evolving towards that whole version of us. And unless we take responsibility to change and the way we are showing up as a grateful woman, nothing changes. And that requires a lot of humility. Gratitude, ultimately, is about being a humble woman, because what you're saying is, I'm just so grateful because I have the humility to know that everybody else is important and that they deserve to feel valued by my presence and by the way I make them feel. It's that deep level of humility. It's not this humility of I am lesser, I'm more. No, you're so humble that you understand your responsibility to communicate your gratitude towards other people. Sometimes we don't, see that connection. So how do you become a grateful woman? Number one, you have to be aware of how you're showing up, period. And that's why I spend a lot of time being, giving you awareness. Number two, the humility to know that you don't have it all figured out. The humility to know, you know what, maybe I wasn't as grateful. Maybe I can receive feedback. Maybe I should reshift my tone. Maybe I think I'm grateful in my 7% of my words, but my tonality, 38, percent of my 55% body language, maybe isn't grateful. The humility to know that you haven't arrived. Number three, we need to process old wounds that inhibit us from actually becoming a grateful woman that changes the quality of our life. Because when we are good to people and we make them feel better, guess what? They make us feel better. It's a beautiful cycle that creates a quality relationship. Number four, we need to know how. Like my children don't know how to be grateful. Maybe, they are grateful, but they don't actually know how to communicate gratitude. In the women's school, we have a whole entire skill dedicated on gratitude, because we need to understand the three parts of gratitude, right? And it's number one, it's communicating your gratitude and saying thank you. Number two is thank you for, so you're actually just saying thank you for something. And then step three is thank you for something. This is how it's making me feel. So it's sort of that three-part process where the highest form of expressing your gratitude would sound like this. Thank you so much for bringing that meal. It was so good. I'll tell you, that really saved me this week. Can you imagine if you communicate in that constant and it becomes habitual, right? Number five, that you practice, because we could know gratitude and not live gratitude, because knowing does not equal being. Knowing does not equal being. And it's an attitude that we constantly sort of chisel in our life. And so that what our goal is to rebuild culture, beginning with rebuilding our every room we walk into. So it's an attitude, it's a way of life, it's a being. First, we practice knowing how to do it, and then we become it, right? We become this grateful woman, and then we make sure we police ourselves and we hold ourselves accountable so we stay grateful, right? We become aware of how we make people feel. You become aware of the metric or the people around you want to be around you. That's how you know you're grateful. You become aware of your own pain if something needs to be healed, or maybe pride. And you're aware of how you're communicating yourself all day long. 7:38:55. We have to make sure that we drill that in our thoughts as a skill set. Because ultimately, we we might think we're grateful, but we are not communicating ourselves in a grateful way, right? Simple, how polite we are, how respectful we are, how affirming we are of the good, how quick we are to actually make people feel important and not complain about them. Because it's a form of entitlement to be ungrateful. It's like, what else can you do for me? Right? Maybe our face is frowning. Maybe we're quick to blame other people because it's easier to blame other people when we don't have success or we don't like the life that we want. And this is why it's so important for us to process our pain and know what's hurting us in every arena of our life, like we do in the women's school, because there could be parts of our life that are hurting unknowingly and we have no language for it. And it's causing us to be ungrateful to our children because maybe we have unprocessed pain with our husband. Maybe we have unprocessed pain with our health, and it's causing us to be a not so nice mom or friend. Right. So this is why we need to process and forgive ourselves and go to counseling and get a coach, because if we continue to have an ungrateful heart, it's going to be a not so beautiful life. But more importantly, we could poison society with an ungrateful woman. And I think this is even I would say the fourth one is just most women just don't know how, right? Most women just don't know how. It's learning to be grateful and learning then how to communicate gratitude. Thank you for, it makes me feel. And it's a skill that we need to practice it over and over again. The state of women in our culture today, an ungrateful woman can poison society, while a grateful woman can rebuild culture. So you can choose who you want to become for such a time as this. And I'll tell you, in our culture today, it's not easy to find a grateful woman. You can pick her out because she lights up the room by her mere presence, because who she is changes the quality of the conversation, it changes the quality of the room. And for those women that are ungrateful or perhaps have unprocessed wounds, sometimes they get jealous of this woman. Sometimes she thinks she's fake. But see, a grateful woman, you just show up and bring your light. And you bring light by bringing light to the heart of other people. Communicate your gratitude. Be sincere. Make time to be intentional about how you are looking people in the eye, your politeness, what you're saying. Have your script ready. Think about something that you can see where you can point out the good. Live a constant attitude of gratitude. And this is how we armor up for the battle, because today we need women that are grateful, that will help rebuild our culture for such a time as this, where the value of women is being erased. The more grateful you are what it means to be a woman, the more you communicate your gratitude, the more we elevate what it means to be a woman. And that, to me, is the best way we can defend the value of women, by becoming fully who we were created to be. And I believe we were created to be grateful. So armor up, be that woman of gratitude, so you can be a light in the room. Thank you. If you like our videos and you like this training videos, please share it, like us, and subscribe. I will be giving you more practical trainings on how to, and the practical life, because what I realize is that we can't keep complaining about our culture and what's happening in our world. We have to give women training and solution. And that's our vision in the Women's School, is we're going to give you the practical how to, because a woman that doesn't know how suffers unnecessarily. And if we just gave women the how, maybe she would design a life that would bring light in the world. Thank you. Follow us on social media and use this training to bring light to your communities, to your schools, and access practical life training that I don't think is available out there. So go forth and conquer. I'll see you in the next training.